Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler, joined today by Kevin Noon. We are underway with official visits. Buckeyes hosted several prospects this past weekend. There's going to be several weekends moving forward. The next three are going to all be big visit weekends for the Buckeyes. We've talked a lot about this on BuckeyeHuddle.com. There's articles from myself and Jeremy Birmingham with what we're hearing coming out of the weekend on BuckeyeHuddle.com for those of you who want to check that out. We've also run a few podcasts discussing various topics here on the YouTube channel, so be sure to check those out. Today, we're going to kind of focus on defensive line. The Buckeyes had several defensive linemen on campus this past weekend. Jake Krull, defensive end out of IMG Academy. Luke Wayful, defensive end out of the Hun School in New Jersey. We got Kari Wilder from California. And Cameron Brickle, a defensive tackle out of IMG Academy as well. So the Buckeyes had 4 defensive linemen on campus. No commitments yet. But, Kevin, obviously this has been a area of concern for Ohio State fans. Going back a few years, are they going to hit their numbers? Are they going to get their top guys? And the way this has started this year where they don't have you're talking about, a 5-6-ish defensive line class. And, it's not really rolling right now with commitments yet. I guess, where is your level of concern at this point? And should Ohio State fans be concerned about defensive line recruiting?
I think Ohio State fans should always be concerned about defensive line recruiting just because of the nature of the beast. And while, we're not necessarily isolating things at defensive tackle, which proves to be more difficult just due to numbers and everybody needing them and there not being enough true tackles out there, to the fact that Ohio as a state has not been producing enough to where Ohio State can go and get 2/3 of the way there in state and then go hunt elsewhere to meet its number. Ohio State's having to do most of its hunting outside of its footprint, and other programs have helmets and shoulder pads and facilities and money, and all of that, cuts into Ohio State's advantages because, you just become another school that's there, and it doesn't make Larry Johnson 30 years younger. It doesn't remove the retirement rumors. It doesn't remove the negative recruiting of not only is Larry going to retire, he's probably going to end up in a home in 3 days, and Ohio State doesn't have a real strong plan in place for who's going to be the next guy there. So, sure, you could go to Ohio State, but they may just lock you out of the facility and forget about you. Which I'm exaggerating to prove a bit of a point, but the reality is that 1 year is an anomaly, 2 years is concerning, 3 years is a very real trend. Ohio State is in a very real trend of maybe not having the defensive line recruiting from tops to tails that it's had certainly at wide receiver, that it's had at safety and other positions. As James Laurinaitis becomes a better and better recruiter, not that that's ever really been an issue at linebacker. There are very real concerns, and forgive me that I've said this before. Ohio State has got to have more than a 6-month plan of how it's approaching its defensive line, but sometimes it's hard to be able to have a 3, 4, 5-year plan with some of the factors that are in play.
Yeah, and look, the glass half empty here is they don't have any defensive line commits right now. And we're 6-ish months from signing day, and they need to come up with 5 or 6 commits here. But here's what I said the other day, and I do think this will prove correct. The list of candidates to be in this defensive line class is much longer than the last couple of summers. The last couple of summers, we have been sitting here and we've been looking at a list of like 5 or 6 guys, and they've got to land like 4 of them. Like, it's been tight. It's been very tight with the numbers. It's kind of been an all eggs in a few baskets type of situation. They had 4 guys on campus this past weekend. They got a bunch more coming in. I believe, given the sheer number of players they're in on, and given how I think they stand for some of them, I do think this will work itself out. You can call me a homer in the comments. That's fine. I won't be the first time or the last time. I've been called negative as well, so it happens. But I like where they stand with a few guys right now, and so I think things are positioned to work out. But boy, they better start getting some commitments. I'm saying this now. If we're sitting here in 6 weeks and they're still on 0 or even 1, I'm going to be like, ooh, okay, maybe not. So it's interesting. I do think they're better positioned than the last couple summers, though. Let's get into the weekend. So again, Jake Krull, IMG Academy Edge. I get great visit there. I tend to believe he's going to end up somewhere else. I think that's kind of a wait and see with him in terms of let's see how some of these other visits go. Let's see how things trend with 1 or 2 other guys at this point at that edge spot. There's some guys, again, bigger body types, I think, kind of take some preference here for the coaching staff. We'll see, but they're in that one. Same kind of deal for me with Cameron Brickle from IMG Academy. They like him. I think he likes Ohio State. I think Jameer Perez is going to have right of first refusal, the Glenville prospect who just committed to Florida but is now visiting Ohio State in 2 weekends. So watch that one closely, folks. Ohio State very much in position there. We talked about it a couple weeks ago when he committed. We did like a Glenville pipeline thing. Is they're concerned about the Glenville pipeline. And we kind of said, look, he just commit. Like, let's see what happens here. He may still visit. Things a lot can happen. Well, he's visiting. So I think Ohio State's in position to make a flip there. So those are the 2, I think, from the weekend that I'm like, okay, let's just wait and see. Let's put those on the back burner for now. Let's see where things are at in a couple weeks with those 2. The 2 that I think were most interesting this weekend, Kari Wilder out of California. This is moving fast. They only offered him like a month ago. They offered him in May. It was like the beginning of May, first or second week of May. So things have developed very quickly here. I felt they had a lot of ground to make up coming into this past weekend. I feel like they've made up a good amount of that. He's got a few official visits left. That one could be interesting. Kevin, you're a California guy. I mean, just, you feel like a little, do you ever like, oh, I hope they get the SoCal kid? Is that how you look at this? Or do you not care about that? I feel like you got some SoCal pride there in you.
I absolutely have SoCal pride. Problem is, my high school doesn't produce anybody. I sit there and I hear about guys coming out of the city I grew up in. I'm like, sweet, I'm going to go and I'm going to see my school listed there. And not only is it not my school, it's like some school that didn't exist when I moved away or whatever. But there was nobody more pulling for the modern day curse to end than me. It's not to the point of where we have felt the necessity to add Southern California to the Southern swing. If I have to root for Ohio State to land 5 or 6 kids from Southern California every year to make that happen, let me just say that I'm going to start that campaign right now, because I do need more In-N-Out Burger and Shakey's Pizza and some of my other things that I grew up on. But, Southern California football maybe is getting slept on a little bit in some regards with, Texas, especially like Texas 6A is going to be what it is. I mean, obviously the state of Florida, especially South Florida, where you have your St. Thomas Aquinas and your Shama Madonnas and your American Heritage and your programs like that. And then you've got emerging states like North Carolina. I mean, Georgia's still fantastic. I mean, I'm not passing on Georgia by any stretch of the imagination. But maybe there's just a distance bias that we don't talk about Southern California as much. Ohio State's not necessarily landing as many Bosco kids as it used to land, and everything else. But, when you look at Kari Wilder, and I'm looking at some of his stats, he had 14 sacks last year. He had 75 tackles, 15 TFLs, 14 sacks. He's a top 250 national type of player. And I'm going to come out and say that he's probably underranked right now, and time will tell. But I think that Ohio State really just needs to keep going with its territory where there is weakness. And sorry, Lincoln, you're not exactly lighting the world on fire at USC. And I'm not living in a world where I'm going to give UCLA any credit ever. Sorry, this is not basketball. This is not John Wooden's not walking through those doors. So you're a non-entity to me when it comes to football until proven otherwise. So if SC isn't able to land these kids, why not Ohio State? I mean, okay, I understand Oregon's a hell of a lot closer. Washington, Arizona State. There are obviously other options out there, but you're the defending national champions. And I think that, we've talked through the years on this, that you generally get your bounce 1 year after. So Ohio State's 27 recruiting would be your bounce worthy class, but I still think it's going to open some doors. And, to the negative of what Marc said, a very true negative, with Ohio State sitting with 0 right now, you're also recruiting kids with an absolutely blank sheet, a clean slate of ice to go out there and do whatever the hell you want to. And Ohio State doesn't have to sit there and be like, well, we got to convince this kid that, we got to convince him he's an edge, but he's really a 3. And because these dominoes here, we got to convince them the reverse of all of that. At this point, I think you just kind of have to land some things and see what happens. But of course, then the flip side too is, when we talk so much about South Florida kids, I think there's a big issue in trying to keep Southern California kids committed when you have them committed for 5-6 months and you're a month out from National Signing Day, and they start to really realize that mom's not going to be around to do their laundry, and that they're not going to be able to go to their favorite taqueria or whatever, and the Mexican food in Columbus sucks and everything else, and you're in over your skis.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, they've got, when you look at the other teams he's visiting, he's going to UCLA, Notre Dame, and Washington. It's not like a murderer's row. It's not like it's Oregon, Texas, and Georgia or something. Like, it's not.
You're really worried about recruiting against Al Washington?
Yeah, I mean, probably not. But you've got this ground to make up. With just kind of getting into the picture here in the last month. So I think that's going to be the interesting part of it. I don't necessarily think the competition's that stiff on this one, but you're giving up a lot of ground there on the relationship process. So this has got to quickly continue to develop, and we'll see what happens. But I think they put themselves very much in the Wilder sweepstakes this weekend. Now, here's the one I think very, very strongly about, and that is Luke Wafel. I think Ohio State's in the driver's seat there coming out of the weekend. I know he's been to Penn State a ton. I think Penn State's probably the biggest competition for Ohio State here, but that visit, according to the people I've talked to, went extremely well. They continue to make him, he is a top of the board guy for them. He doesn't say much, so I think maybe he's flown a little bit under the radar, but he's a top 100 player in the country, and Ohio State would take him today without any hesitation and be doing backflips about it. So that's who I'm most confident in coming out of the weekend along the defensive line. But then you get into like Jameer Perez is coming up on the 13th, or coming down from Cleveland, down 71 from Cleveland on the 13th. You still have Deuce Gerald's coming in that last weekend of the 20th. You've also got on the 20th a very interesting one there in Carter Meadows out of Washington, D.C., who's a top 50 type pure speed rusher off the edge. There are some guys here that they can get. I do think they're going to get Deuce Gerald's. They could get a guy like Keyshawn Olazer from North Carolina, who's coming up in a couple weeks. There are a lot of players on the radar here. And so that's why I'm not ready to go nuts about this yet. I mean, you've got some interesting names coming up. So let me throw this out there. And I'll throw this out to Kevin, and then I'll you guys as well. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Just kind of comment on this scenario. Let's say Ohio State lands Wafel. They flip Jameer Perez. They land Deuce Gerald's. They land PJ Dean. And then you're talking maybe one more guy. Let's say they get those 4 guys, And I know there's a bit of a disparity here in the rankings, but I'm just going to throw out 2 pure defensive ends that they've got a shot at. So let's say they land the 4 I just mentioned, and then they add either Carter Meadows or Keyshawn Alazer. Are you guys not like? To me, that's a great defensive line class. Would that be acceptable for you, Kevin? And I hope I want everyone to comment on that. And would that be an acceptable defensive line class if it plays out that way?
I think it's acceptable now. Here's the thing with Jameer Perez, and we're going to start there. I can't do a show 2 weeks ago and say, well, I think there's a lot of boom bust on Jameer Perez, and now that he's visiting Ohio State, just be like, I was obviously drunk when I said that. I don't mean that. It's all boom. It's all boom, baby. I think that with Perez, he's not. This isn't like the second round of the NBA draft and that he's a sign and stash. You're going to go stash him in Europe somewhere for a year to go let him work on his craft and reshape his body. I mean, you got to work on all of that. I mean, I think I would like to see a little bit more on the interior, to be quite honest. Just something that's there. I mean, I understand certainly that the portal can help get you across the finish line for a year, maybe 2, depending on what's going on there. I think I really like PJ Dean. I really
he's
like.
Probably a 3 tech. I mean, he's probably 3 tech. We know, Deuce is a 3 tech.
Right.
So, I mean, you are getting 3.
You are getting some
You're not getting a ton of beef, but
are we moving? And here's, the snake eating itself or whatever. I see them recruiting these ones, and ones really work a lot better in a 3-4 than they do in a 4-3 type of situation. I understand where you're having a 3 and then you're having a 1 or a 0, depending on, where he lines up in relationship to the center and everything, for those who don't necessarily follow all the nomenclature and everything else that's there. But I think just the thinness that they've had in terms of what their depth at tackle is, this is the year that you have to kind of go overboard on the inside. I mean, I don't think any of us really know what to expect, what life looks like after Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. Guys that were out there so much, and then you're in contract years for Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, and we're gonna get a small taste of Bo Atkinson, but I mean they could get really thin really fast. I mean, I'd still like to see them go at least 6+ on the line. But the names that you mentioned there, and I need to watch more Carter Meadows. I know
he's pretty good.
Oh, I know. But you mentioned Alazer, and I'm somebody that I know a lot better, and I'm very excited about what that could be and everything else. I think we're seeing a class that should be what fans should come to expect at Ohio State. And sadly, the last couple of classes, while there have been some dudes in these classes, have not hit their number, have not hit their mark. Maybe not everybody has necessarily been able to have a chance to prove themselves. So I'm not going to name somebody who's still wet behind the ears and say, this is a sink or swim year for this guy or whatever. But it certainly has felt like Ohio State has been left scrambling when they don't land a Dylan Stewart or somebody of that level that falls out. I think the biggest thing for Ohio State is they need to get their board figured the bleep out and then not start playing chess pieces. And I'm not saying take a bunch of 3 stars just so, damn it, don't miss your count. But if Ohio State gets to October again and is sitting at half its number and has 2 kids left on the board, seriously, to fill 4 spots, I'm going to be pissed. I
don't think that's going to happen. I really don't.
Well, I know, but I'm just speaking historically.
Yeah. I think I think they'll push this number to 6. I don't think it'll just be 5. I think they will push to 6 defensive linemen. Who knows? I mean, if they could find 7 that would all be willing to sign up to play together, maybe they would do that too. But I think it's going to be a big number. But I think that baseline of 5 is just, I'm kind of operating on like the lower end maybe of things. But I think what I laid out is pretty realistic. And you throw in Wilder. Maybe you get Wilder. Maybe you get the guys, 5 of the 6 guys I mentioned earlier, and then you get Wilder, and then Wilder's kind of your Edric Houston of the class of, okay, we're going to start him at defensive end. Does he eventually move inside? And, Dean and Gerald's are your 3-tech. Perez is your nose. And then you've got your edge guys there, either with Elazer or Meadows, along with Wafel. But I, for as much as I'm guarding against like getting overly optimistic because of how some things have went the last couple of years at certain times, I'm about as confident as I can be, I think, at this point, that this is going to look pretty good in about 2 months. So we'll see. Again, we'll revisit in 2 months. I'll eat my crow if I have to in 2 months. But
this is a reversal. I'm generally the real optimistic guy, and you're the realist.
No, I like where they stand with Wafel. I think they're going to flip Perez. I like where they stand with Deuce Geralds. I like where they stand with PJ Dean. There are some guys here I think they can get. And like I said, Meadows, to me, I think Ohio State, Meadows is another guy who kind of doesn't talk a whole lot. So he's kind of, but Larry Johnson's had good success in that part of the country. I think Ohio State feels they're in that one. Here's something I'm going to throw out there for another reason for optimism. The return of Miguel Patrick has been enormous. He knows so many of these kids. He's recruited so many of these kids. He has relationships all over the country, but especially in the South. That is helping spearhead this as well. It's not just like Larry Johnson didn't just wake up today and start changing the way he recruits, but Larry Johnson's does it the way he wants to do it. But Miguel Patrick has been another layer there that has helped Ohio State, in my opinion, with this wider net approach and with building these relationships. And so I would be surprised if we're sitting here, let's say middle of August. I'd be surprised if we're sitting here in the middle of August and we're in a panic about defensive line recruiting.
Well, they really needed Miguel Patrick because of the loss of Alan Clark to Texas and everything else. I think that Alan Clark is a rising star. I think he's beyond rising star. I think rising star is where he was a year ago. I think he's a star now. And that was one of those non-frontline staff moves that probably didn't get talked about enough. And I went and talked to a buddy who covers Texas. I'm like, this is a great get for you guys. This is really a great get. But I just think that Ohio State cannot vapor lock itself and have people at the table who believe that they're going to land everybody, and in turn they land nobody because they run off the kids that here in June and July they absolutely could have landed, to hold off and think that they're going to get, players that they probably weren't going to get. And I mean, we can go back previous administrations and other positions about times when that happens. And then, we look at the kids that they end up landing instead, and it's like, oh, that was never going to work. So I'll be optimistic. I'm in a mood. I've been in a mood lately. Optimism has not been something I have a lot of at the moment. So I will feed off of your optimism and say I'm optimistic that you're optimistic.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that then. Like I said, I think we're going to be talking about this quite a bit over the summer. There's going to be a big storyline as their defensive line class and how this is coming together. So I'll have plenty of opportunities to eat crow if I'm overly optimistic right now. But I like where they stand with a lot of guys, and I like that there are a lot of guys that they are in contention with versus a small handful of guys that they're in contention with, where if one or two go sideways, you're like, oh boy, what do we do now? I don't think they're in that situation this summer. We'll see. But that'll do it for this one. Kevin, thanks again for joining me. Camps, Thursday's our first camp at Ohio State this month. So check us out at BuckeyeHuddle.com for all your camp coverage. Be myself, Jeremy Birmingham, Kevin. Probably get Tony out there to a couple of these. Maybe Tom when he gets back from wherever he's vacationing. Probably one of the national parks. I know he likes to go to those. Do we know where Tom's at?
I absolutely know where Tom's at, but I'm not gonna tell right now.
Okay. All right. Well, why? I was gonna have everyone go harass him there and ruin his vacation.
He's not at a national park.
He's not at a national park. Oh, okay.
At least not an American national park.
Oh. Okay. Wow. Big trip. All right. Well, we appreciate everyone watching, listening. Please support us again at BuckeyeHuddle.com, where we will have all sorts of wall-to-wall camp coverage here in the next few weeks, and, of course, official visit coverage the next 3 weekends. Thanks again, everyone. We'll talk to you again soon.